Awesome.
Kia ora everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bosses of Knowledge. You will have noticed Tane is not here today. He's busy doing something else, getting ready for his research data collection this week. So it's just going to be me and our guest. But before we talk about and introduce my guest, I just want to talk about the learnings I had since our last podcast. I'm reading a great book at the moment. I'm reading this book here, Never Finished by David Goggins. For those of you that don't know, David Goggins is a pretty crazy person. But the cool thing about what I've been learning from this book here is just about how to face not your demons, I guess. When you have a problem, it's easy to blame other people, but and to find other people to give you purpose and reason, but actually what comes down from you as a person. You've got to find out why that is. There's so much more in there, but if you ever have a chance to listen or read his book, I strongly recommend it. It has got lots of strong language. It is pretty confrontational, so just be aware of that there. But that's my recommendation, I guess, for today. For regular listeners out there, you know that we scour the country and the world actually to find some amazing speakers. We think this world is full of amazing people out there, and we're trying to bring some of them on here to share their experience and their story as they've come from where they have to where they are at the moment. And this week is no exception. We have a wonderful and fantastic guest. Welcome to our podcast, Sam.
Hey, really grateful to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. It's been really hard trying to get Sam onto this podcast because he's a very, very busy person. And Sam, do you want to tell our listeners why you're a busy person? What are you actually doing at the moment in your life?
Yeah, so my name's Sam. I am currently in my fourth year of being a doctor and currently based in the Auckland region. In January, I've just started a new position in anesthetics, so that has been keeping me busy over the last month. But prior to that, I was working in ICU in Auckland, and then the 6 months prior to that, I was working in ED.
Yeah, I was just talking with Sam just before that. I've known Sam for a very long time, and it's very hard to keep track of his career pathway because he does some amazing, amazing things, which is why we have him on here, I guess, today. Sam, before we talk about where you're at the moment, let's talk about where you were all those years ago as a year 13 in Manawatu. What is that like, growing up there and going, hey, if I said to you, Sam, in X amount of years, you're going to be a doctor, what would you have said to me?
I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be honest.
Yeah.
So originally, did my high schooling in the Fielding, which is a fairly small rural town, but the high school was fairly large with like 1,200 students, I believe. So again, like quite a sheltered high school, and there you can be a big fish in sort of a small pond. So academically, I always felt that I was towards the top of the class, but when I got to Dunedin, I quickly found that there are a number of intelligent people out there in New Zealand and doing some incredible things. And medicine was on my mind at that stage and planning to go down to do health sciences. So I was doing, of course, all the sciences, chemistry, physics, biology and calculus, Japanese and English. So I had, at that time, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well in NCEA and sort of this anticipation that it would help for health sciences. But yeah, probably, although as much as I wanted to, I'm not sure I would have believed you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And before we talk about that, was there motivation for you to be a doctor? Or medicine as a pathway? Was it intrinsic or was it extrinsic or just
Yeah.
I enjoy the sciences, so therefore,
That's the cliche answer.
yeah, the cliche, exactly.
An
Yeah.
answer I would have given in some of my interviews in Auckland University to get into medicine there as well. But like for me, it definitely started as a child. And I don't know exactly where it came from. My parents aren't in any sense medical at all, not even university educated. But I think it probably came from being around doctors and surgeons as a child, having, your typical ear, nose, and throat procedures and going to your GP for regular checkups and having that admiration for what they do. And I always sort of had this interest in biology. And I can remember in primary school, you know how you do those book reviews and things like that. I wrote a book review about pregnancy and the stages of pregnancy. And I got to school ready to present this, and all the other kids had brought their posters on your typical fiction books. And I was so embarrassed. I really didn't want to present it. And then subsequent to that, I think again, just really enjoying sciences and just seeing what doctors were able to do and just having a huge admiration for the work really inspired me to get involved. Yeah, we'll head in that direction.
And then that's really beautiful because, like you said, a lot of people say, I enjoy science, so therefore I should do it. But actually, it comes to the admiration, but also the passion. The passion started from a long time ago. It wasn't just an overnight thing. I mean, I'm trying to picture you coming along with your book review on pregnancy, and all your mates have got, say, Harry Potter or
Yeah, yeah,
Hunger Games or Twilight, and you're like, yeah, like that would have been pretty confronting for you as a young person when everyone else is
yeah.
doing that there. Yeah. But hey, I kind of imagine what you went through at that stage there, but here you are right now. So well done you for sticking to your guns. One thing you mentioned that really stuck out though, your family or your parents were not university educated. So what is that like for you navigating the okay, parents have not gone to university, I want to go to university. What is that like for you and your family?
My parents, although they had never been to university, it was a big thing for them for us to go to university because they never had the opportunity. So we're really supportive of that and really encouraging. So, I mean, I'm really grateful to have that really strong network of support. But my mum had no idea of how university works, had no idea of university colleges, and no idea of how health sciences worked. So for both of us, it was like a massive challenge to try and navigate this difficult journey. Of course, we had the representatives come from Otago to come and talk to us about the courses and things like that, which was a strong network of information. But it eventually led to us going down to Otago during one of the school holidays and having a look around and slowly figuring it out from there. But it was definitely a challenge. Yeah.
And I think that's an appreciation there because lots of people out there have whānau or family that have been to university, so it's not as daunting. But when you have family or whānau who've never been to university, that the whole dauntingness is doubles because it's not just your anxiety, it's also your parents' anxiety, and in your case, your mom's anxiety as to actually what's going to happen. It's not
Yeah.
anxiety. It's not anxiety about it's anxiety of the unknown. That's just human nature. You don't
Yeah.
know, and you hear all these stories here, and you go, "Oh, damn!" But hey, you came along, and I guess with the anxiety as well. You chose to come down south to Dunedin, but in terms of anxiety, it would have been easier for you to go home closer to Auckland, where you're closer to your family. What was the choice that you made to decide to go further away? If you can remember that.
Yeah. I the it was always Otago or Auckland, of course, for medical training.
Yeah.
And I do have some family up here in Auckland, which would have been the logical choice to come up here. And I mean, I did, of course, all the initial applications for halls up here and was accepted into halls in Auckland. But Dunedin, to me at the time, and other people may have differing opinions, but it did seem like a lot of people were coming from all across the country to Dunedin and then there making friends and sort of building your network and community down there. Auckland to me at the time seemed like it was more of a place where people who lived in Auckland went to university out of convenience and out of where their friends were going and where their network of support already was. Dunedin also was a smaller city, and so coming from a small rural town, it was the next logical sort of small step up. And Dunedin just seemed like a really awesome university and vibrant community to be a part of. So those were my main deciding factors. Unfortunately, in my year, only one other person went down to Dunedin in my year. No one, I believe, went to Auckland as well. So where my peers were going was not a massive part of my decision either.
I love how you share that because it's not about just a better university or worse university. It was just for you in your space, and you're thinking it was okay, cool, small town, meet a lot of people, okay, done, easy, and you applied everywhere because you covered all your bases. Now let's talk about that health side here. For those of you that don't know about the health science first, I guess like any medical program, the initial program is pretty challenging. What is that like for you? Because you're navigating this whole university journey. Your mom is navigating with this as well, and then you've got this beast of a program that comes along. What is that like for you? And how did you find yourself as a person go through that process there?
Yeah, I mean, like I knew it was going to be hard, and everyone had told me it was going to be hard. And getting down there, it's this whole new change. So you're settling into a new environment, new accommodation, making new friends. And then you've got this whole beast of health sciences first year to deal with, of which the learning is on another level to NCEA. You have these massive lecture theatres where thousands of people are sitting there compared to your classroom of 30 to 40. And a whole change in, I believe, in how you're supposed to learn and acquire the new knowledge that they're trying to teach you. I personally struggled with it quite a bit, and this change was quite a huge step up from what I was expecting, even though I was anticipating it to be quite hard. And I remember sort of sitting there and being intimidated by everyone around me and everyone talking about sort of where they've come from and what they've done and how impressive that was. Whereas in my small school, sort of that would have been top of the year or top of the subjects there. So it was moving into sort of an area where the competition was a lot larger and people were working on what I thought was a whole another level to what I was used to.
It's so hard because everyone is saying these things here, and everyone puts on a mask, right? You have no idea what they're going through, and as you're going through that journey through yourself, they could be doing the same thing, but it's just that mask because you are just thrust in front of all these people here, and you've got to try and say, "I'm pretty smart," but you're like inside you're going, "Actually, I don't know."
Yeah. And I think that other aspect leading to it was the halls is a big, massive deal going into your first year of university, and I had no idea of the different sort of ways you're supposed to apply for your halls. And I don't think it matters in the end anyway, but I didn't get a hall that I initially put down, actually. And then when I got that offer, I was devastated because I was thinking I needed to go to the top sort of Arana and Carrington and all those sort of so-called prestigious colleges. So coming into health sciences this year, I was like, I'm at this hall that isn't quite as good as those ones, and I'm already on the back foot, and they have better resources than what I'm going to be getting, and slightly came into it with a negative mindset, I guess.
And it's hard, right? Because you hear all these things. Yeah, you hear now that you've gone through education, it does actually matter. But as a year 13 around the country, or as year 12, you hear all these things and go, oh. And sometimes it's not even real. It's just because perception and the perception. But as a young person, it happens with lots in life with a lot of scenarios. Oh, I need to get a Ferrari. I need to get this because it's a better car. I need to live here because it's better. But at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter. But it's hard to tell your year 13 brain that there, because that doesn't believe it. It's not going to believe it. Doesn't matter what doesn't believe it at all. But you navigated that, and you went through health sci first year. And what is that like for you in terms of your social growth as well? Because small school, small region into this environment with these 20,000 people, and you're in a hall that's pretty big as well. How did you navigate that as a young person?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to Cumberland Court, which was actually quite a different environment to the hall experience where you're in this flat of 5 or 6 others. So that was actually quite nice and actually worked out quite well for me because you developed a really strong relationship with the other people in that flat. And then from there, you can slowly branch out and sort of meet your neighboring flat and then, build on that network from there. So in that regard, not that you're forced to, but I found that it was really easy to make friends from that point. And it was like a really small sort of stepping stone again. So it was the right transition, I think, for me. But that was sort of, that environment was where I met everyone, and the lecture theatres were so intimidating, of course, that you stick to your group of people that you know and always make sure to find a buddy that you went to lectures with, and hopefully someone else that you know is going to a lab. But the hall environment or the Cumberland Court environment was a massive social support for me.
And it's important because that's the important part of the piece that we forget about, that it's not just academic stuff, it's that social support that probably gets you through whatever you're going through at that point in time. So you did health that first year and you wrote the exams and you now wait for your results. How was that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, so the first semester I found really hard. And sort of towards the end of that first semester, I sort of knew that I probably wasn't on track to getting into medicine. I guess there was still that little bit of hope that by some miracle my exam results would be incredible. But then as they came through, I sort of had that realization that it's not on the cards this year, in the health sciences first year. And I mean, I feel like I was trying to reflect earlier onto how I felt back then. And I don't know whether I was particularly devastated by it, but I don't know whether that's because as I was going through that first semester, I sort of anticipated where it was going and sort of prepared myself that I like most likely wouldn't be getting into medicine that year. But I think as I came through, I got a physics grade that was 69 or something. So that was definitely below the cutoff required for medicine and automatically ruled me out. So it wasn't like it. So that was like the definitive, like, no, it's not happening this year.
Yeah.
And I like, of course, my parents were always so supportive in me getting into medicine. It's not something that was driven by them. So they weren't particularly concerned. They were just like, you've done the best that you can and
Yeah.
it's awesome. Keep going.
Yeah. And and it's an awesome realization because it's quite hard. You have this aspiration of getting to med school, and slowly realize actually it might not be now. But I love how you said it's not now. So was it still your plan that hey, you're still going to try and get into med school at some point?
Yeah. So my RA in that first year was in medicine, studying medicine at the time, and he was a postgraduate student. So from that point and talking to him and him sort of being a mentor as well, like I was very aware that postgraduate is an awesome way to get into medicine, and it's not the end of the world not getting into medicine from health sciences. You can take this slightly longer way to get there and still be an awesome person and still achieve the things that you want to achieve. And then sort of during that period started to think more about the postgraduate way and sort of what degree I'd be looking at getting into. Yeah.
I love how you mentioned you had your mentor because I think a lot of people don't realize that those little conversations that you have along the way and those mentors you find along the way actually help you see that the pathway that you have at the moment, there's one pathway that you think you have, but then there's actually multiple pathways to get to the goal that you want as long as you are driven to get to that goal there.
Yeah.
And you will come back to your story because you became a mentor later on as well, which I'm pretty sure inspired lots of young people. So you now have this realization, okay, health side not going to happen, med school. Um, what was your driver to keep you still going into med school? Because at some, lots of people go, I'm done. This is it. You said you had the push your pathway, but it's a drive. Where did the drive come from now?
Yeah. I mean, like lots of the people that were in the flat that I was in also didn't have grades that would get them into medicine or any other specialties, and quickly dropped out or changed into different areas. And they're all on awesome life tracks and doing incredible things, I have to say as well. So it's not
Yeah,
like it was the
yeah,
end of the
totally.
world for them. Um, for me, I think it was just again the foundation that had been set in terms of really driven and wanting to do medicine and my admiration for the specialty, and probably being a little bit fixated and not seeing myself doing anything else actually helped.
Yeah.
A little bit narrow-minded in that regard. Definitely sort of built it, and it was something that I definitely knew I could do. And at that point, I just felt that I needed a little bit more time to get there.
I love it that because as you said before, it wasn't driven by your parents. It wasn't driven externally. It was driven from an internal drive. And at the end of the day, you got there in a different way, in a different way. And then
Mm.
what degree did you choose? So now you've got to choose. So first of
Yeah.
all, you're like, oh, I'm doing health and first year, nice and easy. This is all set for me. Now it becomes, oh damn, I've actually got to choose something. How did you go around that scenario?
Yeah. And that was incredibly difficult, I have to say, because health sciences this year is so open and you cover a huge number of different disciplines. Um, and then so in my first year, so I started off with a Bachelor of Science and I selected, I covered everything essentially. So physiology, genetics, microbiology, and one other that escapes my mind at the moment.
Anatomy, maybe?
Anatomy, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so based on those, so that was because I had no clue as
Yeah.
to what to do. And a Bachelor of Sciences allowed me to sort of explore those options in first semester. And there was always the plan to see which one of those I really enjoyed and then to continue on with that and adjust my degree as such. The other option was doing like a biomedical sciences degree, but they have a more of a fixed paper set. So I
Yeah.
thought the Bachelor of Sciences would be good. And again, you're not fixed into anything during the second year. You can actually, a Bachelor of Sciences, Bachelor of Biomedical Sciences doesn't really make a huge difference until the end of your degree. But at the initial stage, Bachelor of Sciences kept things really open and allowed me to explore those different avenues. Because I really wasn't sure. I knew that I quite enjoyed cells and at the start of first year in the first semester, and was one of my better papers. So I thought micro was probably the direction I was heading, but I definitely didn't want to set myself into a particular area and not enjoy it, because it was going to be a long extra 2 years if I had. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And what are you choosing? What is your final degree?
Yeah, so I mean, I enjoyed all of those
That's a problem, right?
subjects, yeah, which was the problem. But it was an intensely heavy course load as well.
Yeah.
And then what I found was that micro was the one that I enjoyed the most, actually. And I found that it stuck with me, which of course is important to get the grades required for medicine. And it was something that I could see being useful as well in medicine. Not that all the specialties are, but micro I felt would also sort of add to that. And I really enjoyed the lecturers in microbiology, which was probably the deciding factor.
And I guess it comes down to what you enjoy. You know, like you said before, if you don't enjoy it, it'll be 2 long years, and then you probably won't get into med school because
No.
you wouldn't have the grades. You'd be like, oh damn, this is helpful, but I have no passion. So, you might be useful in med school right now, but at that point in time, the fact that you enjoyed it was actually the bigger thing than
Yeah.
the fact of having med school. Because we all go through those logical things. Oh, is it going to be useful, not useful? But if you don't enjoy it, doesn't matter if it's useful or not, right?
Yeah. And that was the big thing for me, is what one I found most enjoyable and which one I loved attending, and it was the one that you look forward to each week. Yeah.
Now that you so let's step away from academia and talk about Sam as a human. Sorry, Sam as a human, as academic as well, but the other side of your university experience. So you're now doing academics. So what growth did you see yourself getting involved in as you now realize, okay, cool, and I've now got 2 years to focus on my grades? Did you find that you now had less of a pressure to try and explore different pathways and do different things while you're at university?
Yeah, so definitely sort of as I took off that dedicated academic side, allowed me to sort of explore different avenues and make new friends in different areas and sort of see more of what Dunedin actually had to offer, rather than the immediate sort of university zone that you stick yourself to in your first year. Yeah.
And what are some of those things that you got involved in? What is as you reflect now, what is one of the things that you just were like, wow, this is just as an instrumental change in my life, or it's really impactful?
Definitely working as an RA was probably the biggest impactful
Yeah. Yeah.
period of my university year experience.
And was that in your undergrad program, or was that when you were
I
in med
actually
school?
did that at the start of my second year of medicine. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So
Yeah.
if we rewind back, we come to that there. So as you're doing your undergrad, you finish your 3 years. Were the things that what did you learn about yourself as a young person? The strength, resilience, or anything that just goes, hey, this is what I feel about myself, which just stands for you, I guess, as a person.
Yeah. I mean, doing those 3 years as an undergrad with my BSc, I really felt that the academics and things all actually fell into place quite nicely. And I was
Yeah.
achieving the grades that I thought I could achieve. And I was doing the things that I enjoyed doing, and sort of picked up some extra subjects in forensics and human nutrition as well, which were awesome and broadened my scope of interests. And also just sort of meeting new friends and things through that as well. And yeah, I think it was primarily resilience and knowing that I could actually achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. I was quite set. I think I was very determined as well at that stage, and I was like, this is not my only shot, but it's probably the biggest shot that I have to get into medicine, and I'm gonna focus quite hard on it. So it's definitely a little bit like some resilience there as well. Because of course it didn't always go my way. You'd get, your internal papers and things that weren't quite the grades that you were expecting to achieve. But I mean, that we just small step backs in the whole scheme of things. And eventually when you got your final semester grades there, they were fine. And I was on track into sort of achieving what I wanted to achieve, which was getting into medical school.
I love that because, we speak about all the other things, but you had a goal. Your goal was to get into med school, and all the other things happening around you as a person. You met all your friends, you do that kind of stuff, but your goal was, hey, these next 2 years, my goal is to get into med school. So you apply as a postgrad, you apply into postgrad med school. And what is that feeling like when you get the offer that goes, hey, dear Sam Grainger, you offer a spot in med school? How does that feel because you've gone the long way?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't have the anxiety and stuff in that first year of applying because I knew that it was going to be the case. But now that I had the shot, I had the grades, that was definitely a long summer leading up, and because they always release them around sort of Christmas, the 15th or something of December, which is a terrible time to release those sort of results. So you're with home, with family, they all sort of know that you're expecting this offer to come out or this result to come out. And we just had sort of a pre-family Christmas, and all the family had been around and sort of course, asking what I'm going to do next year. And you got to give this sort of answer. I don't know. I could be doing honors. I could be doing medicine. I really don't know where I'm going to be, which is quite unsettling. Yeah. And it was a lot easier when you had the definite idea that you weren't going to get in, but this time there's this chance, there's this glimmer of hope. And I had also applied in Auckland as well, so I'd done an interview there, and they were the first ones to offer me a place in medicine, actually.
Oh wow!
And it was just after that family lunch.
Yeah.
And I remember running upstairs to tell my mum, who immediately got on the phone to my dad, and I had that. We've finally done it.
Yeah.
Celebration. Yeah.
What a moment, what a moment. And I mean, like you said before, when when you have the definite, I'm not going to get in, at least it's a resolution.
Yeah.
But here you have the grades, you have everything you think you need, but it's out of your hands. You have no idea what they're looking for, and it could be a no, and you could just be devastated, right? So you hit your bets, and you're like, oh, I need to be careful. I need to be careful. But hey, well, you got your offer at Auckland, you got your offer at Otago, fantastic. And then you had to choose again. So you've got two offers in front of you now. Why and how did you choose? Because you might go, hey, I've had my Otago time. Auckland's another fantastic school.
Yeah.
How did you and why did you choose to come back down to the cold again?
I know. It would have been a good opportunity to leave. But I mean, going to Auckland, because you go to Auckland for the interview, which was in person. I don't know whether they've changed it after COVID, but I'm pretty sure it'd still be in person. And they have fantastic facilities. So they've got this amazing lecture theatre and clinical sciences area right opposite the hospital. It was very enticing. Yeah. I thought about it for a bit, but essentially what it came down to was, again, social supports and the network of friends that I built down in Dunedin were there, and some were also going into medicine as well as postgraduates. And I was familiar with the way that the Otago University worked, and that was the big reason to get back down to Dunedin, was where all my social supports were.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, because you have choice, you have choice. And I guess you went with what you knew, and the fact you'd already got an established, and the word that keeps coming back to me is your network, social networks, social support networks, because it becomes important to you as you get into this next stage of your study. In fact, it's important every stage of your study.
Yeah.
So you come down, and what is it like now going into going into med school as a postgrad, and you have in your same class, you have people that are first years in med school. If that makes sense, So you're an older student.
Yeah.
What is that like for you, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, so as you mentioned, you have of course, the ones that come straight out from house sci, and then you have these postgraduates who are typically third or fourth year at university, and then you have your super grads who are well established in their particular area and then have moved into medicine, whether that be nursing background, pharmacy background, any sort of background. So you kind of feel like you're an old person in the bunch of in the scheme of things. And I think it would be very easy to come into it thinking that you have all this experience and all this knowledge ahead of these fresh people straight out of house side. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you've only got 2 more years of doing university ahead of them. So you're all on the same page. You're all at the start of your medical training. There's not a lot different from that separating everyone. I tried to just sort of integrate myself into every sort of avenue, because these are going to be your colleagues. These are going to be the people that you work with throughout your career. And it's important to have a wide network that you can talk to and people who know you and recognize you. So I made sure to sort of flick between all the groups essentially.
No, I think that's the most important thing, because you're all in this together, right? So it doesn't matter where you've come from. Your past doesn't dictate your present or your future.
Yeah.
But you just got to make the most of the people around you. And I mean, since I've known you for a long time, I've seen how you've done that, and successfully as well. Because that's how growth happens. And now, if we switch back to the greatest impact it had in your life, you chose to become a RA or a subordinate, or whatever term people use these days. What made you want to do that there? Because you've got a heavy program. Med school is pretty heavy, and being a subordinate RA, tutor, whatever you call those. What was your decision around that there?
Yeah, I mean, looking back now, the role that a subordinate RA has actually is quite a massive role, probably one that I underappreciated at the time. There's some naivety into getting into it. But the big thing was that my RA was such a big mentor and had a significant impact on me. And I felt that I could potentially offer the same sort of mentorship or guidance to tertiaries as well. And it was something sort of that I felt like prior to coming into university, because of course my parents didn't have that university background, that I don't really understand a lot of how university works. So coming into university with that fresh mindset, I felt that I could offer tertiaries some advice or help guide them navigate through that period. And it's a hard period. And I felt, I have a few skills to offer there, and potentially could help out. Yeah. So that was my primary driving reason to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, those are fantastic reasons and fantastic motivations. And you said before that it had impact on your life. What are some of the things that like you said before, you don't realize how big that role actually is until you actually do the role and reflect back on the role. Are there any stand-up moments for you that like, wow, this is actually pretty crazy?
Yeah.
In an awesome way and non-awesome way as well, because there's both good and bad, right? There's some challenging times when you go, I actually can't do this. This is way beyond my brief, but I have to do something here.
Yeah. So I mean, the awesome aspects are meeting a whole heap of people who, although they're your students in your first year, they actually become your friends, and you get to follow what they get up to, and that's awesome to see. So making those connections as well is awesome, and you build a lot of like soft skills or your personal skills in that role. You have to talk to people from a variety of backgrounds, which is like something that's incredibly needed in medicine as well, because you talk to people from a whole heap of different backgrounds in your day-to-day life, and you need to be able to make conversation with people, and you need to be able to make them feel comfortable. So learning those sort of skills as an RA has really benefited, I think, my career as a whole. You learn leadership skills as well, guiding these 30, 40 young people through their initial first year. And like management skills, time management skills, also like balancing this job with your full-on medical studies as well is an incredible sort of thing to learn as well, and something that's also required in my day-to-day life at the moment is balancing my medical career with my outside social life. So all of these things have, I think, played an important role in the doctor that I've become today, and hopefully the consultant that I'll become in the future. Some of the downsides are you're dealing with 30 to 40 young people that, again, are all coming from different backgrounds and different experiences. And as you've mentioned, it's an incredibly stressful period in this first year, and they're all going through different things. So there's a lot of mental health in that aspect, and a lot of people that you've got to watch out for particularly. So that's making sure that people are coming down for their meals, are around and present in the college. You have the bad side is telling some people off for, as they've got to abide by the drinking rules and the noise rules, which is you playing the bad guy in a number of circumstances, which isn't the most pleasant thing to do. And then you have like serious health events that can occur in the college as well. And that's scary. You think you're a big shot second, third year medical student who knows a lot, but actually when it comes to sick 18-year-olds, you know nothing.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that, because it is, people have this perception that when you go to university, life sort of stops, but life still carries on. University is just one part, and as you mentioned before, you celebrate the successes, you celebrate the growth, you celebrate the leadership, that going up on meals, but at the same time you have sickness, you have people that misbehave, you might even have death. Things just happen, and life still carries on, and you have to approach each of those. And I guess one of the cool things for you is your warden at the time, or your master, was is a pretty awesome person as well. He would have supported you the whole way through, right?
Yeah. So I mean, in that regard, you have a strong network of people above you who I had Nick Bates and Rosemary, who are incredible wardens, and heads of colleges at various colleges in Dunedin at the moment. But yeah, so you've got the strong network above you, and also your other RAs as peers are awesome as well, and they support you and you support them. But definitely some trying times during those years. Yeah,
I can imagine. Did you go back again for another year, or did you just do 1 year?
Oh, so I did that year, and then as I go down in my medical university career, I did this BMed Sci honours year, and then came back for another year, surprisingly. Yeah.
Let's talk about the BMed Sci. So for those of you that not aware, so at Otago or New Zealand, I guess you have your 2 years of med school, so first year, second year, or third year actually, and then you can press pause and do BMed Sci. So here's someone who's done a 3-year program already, and now you decide to extend your medical program for another year. What is your thinking behind that there?
Yeah. So I mean, at the start of my second and third year, I heard about this BMed Sci year, and I immediately said that's something I'd never do.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? I've done a degree. I'm never going to do that. I'm just going to graduate, get on my training pathway, and
live your life.
Live my life, earn money, live my life. And then it was just an opportunity in my third year, I did a summer school paper. I was doing summer research. So you stay in Dunedin for the summer and work with professors and consultants and work on a research project. And I happened to work on a project with a really cool team of surgeons, and really enjoyed the work that I was doing there. And so we completed that project, and it was just a chance corridor meeting in my 5th year. I saw the professor that I worked with and sort of quickly catched up, and as we crossed paths, and he said, you could do this BMed Sci year and do a bit more research. And I was like, but then he sort of mentioned that he would support, like the department will support me through that, and sort of just planted that seed in my mind. and then as I sort of went through the year, I kept thinking a little bit more about it. So I emailed him, organized a meeting, and sort of discussed what it would look like and what project I'd do and sort of how I'd fund it as well. And then I started thinking about it a bit more, and I was like, nah, this would be a pretty cool avenue to take. And I was really interested in research, and I want to do a PhD, so it's a good stepping stone in that regard to have a solid basic foundation set in an honours year. And then eventually took the plunge.
And what was the project that you did, if you can remember?
So I did a network meta-analysis in bariatric surgery. So essentially that's looking at all of the bariatric surgery techniques and looking at all the research that's been done, ever published about it, and then comparing all of those trials and seeing which one is the best for various outcomes.
Wow, lots of journals, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I think I searched a couple of thousand articles initially and broke it down, I think, into 100 and something. Yeah.
Oh wow. I think that's when I crossed paths with you, because that's when you came with your hands on as well at that point in time. Yeah.
So that was the other aspect. So I mean, up until I'd finished my 5th year exams, and that's when typically you'd head into your trainee intern year, which is the year you earn money, and the year that's, sets the foundation for becoming a junior doctor in your first year. And most people are really keen to get into that because you earn, it's the first salary that you've ever earned during your university career, and you're almost so close to being a doctor and graduating. And then I've just suddenly taken this year out and delayed it by a year. But what I found was that I'd be able to do my research, and I'd also be able to do a few other things that I hadn't been able to be involved with during my university career. One of them was hands-on, which is where I was very fortunate to meet you.
It was me that is fortunate, Sam.
And then was able to do the RA year again, and then also be involved with a few different volunteer organizations, one of them being Aspire. Yeah.
What is tell us about the volunteering? So, and I love this because now you're getting so close to the end, but I've actually got to look after myself and do some other things for myself. So we went back to an RA. Don't know why I did that, but hey, awesomeness. Yeah. I'm kidding. And tell us about the volunteer stuff that you got involved in.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd always been keen on doing some volunteer work and hadn't really, well, I thought I didn't really have the time for it. And there are a few things that I wanted to be involved with, like hands-on, was something I'd heard a lot about. And it was something that I wish that I could have gone to as a young person. And then so I went and had a chat and signed myself up for it, not really knowing what to expect, I think, just knowing that it was going to be a week of
who knows what.
A week of sort of intense work and minimal sleep. But knew that I'd be working with young people and sort of planting that seed about university and telling my story as well was another big reason for wanting to do it. And again, providing that mentorship and sort of letting them know from an early stage that there's lots of different ways to go about this. So that was one. Although you get paid, it's not massive. You dedicate a lot of your time, and it's a week in January as well. So during summer, when you could be out doing, I guess, more exciting things. But that was so that I count that as a volunteer thing. And then Aspire I was also involved with, which is a program where you work with young primary school children and you take them to various things around the university, and again plant that sort of seed that university is an option, and usually from low decile schools in New Zealand. And you get partnered up with a young person and you take them through these activities and talk to them about what's going on in their lives and talk to them about what you're doing at university, and get involved in these collaborative projects together and just sort of build on that across the first semester. And I did that for 2 semesters. And then during that time I did, they were the main.
And then I guess if you look back, those are amazing skills that you've taken on into your life. At that point in time, you're doing it because you want to help young people. But if you think about your professional career right now, what are you doing every day? You're talking to people. You're going
Yeah,
through whatever they're going through in their lives. And most people that come to see you, most that come to see a doctor, it's not because they're having a great time in their life. It's because
no,
things happen in their life. And a lot of young people that you work with, when you start getting close to them, they'll tell you about the stuff that's not great in their life as opposed to
yeah,
all the good stuff. So, it's crazy how that training happens, and it's quite transferable across whatever skill set you get into. But
yeah.
at that
So
point in time, you don't think about it. Sorry.
no, I didn't. No, I didn't think about it. Like, yeah, at the time, I didn't really think about it. I was just like, oh, these are some cool opportunities to get
Yeah.
involved with. But now I can see it really becoming a huge part of the work that I do. So, like, when people are coming into surgery at the moment, it's high anxiety, high stress, and you're seeing kids as well who this is their first time in hospital. They're meeting these strangers who are wearing masks and dressed in blue. You can imagine it's a terrifying experience for them. So being able to sort of reflect on what I did in Aspire and working in hands-on, it's the skills that you learn there are incredibly transferable to the work I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens, right? You don't realize it, but most things that we do in our life, we can use them and call on them at different points in our whatever
Yeah.
life path we use. Let's switch focus now. Let's talk about your medical training. So you finish up, you graduate as a doctor, amazing, well done. And then what is the pathway like? Because you read the media like, oh, junior doctors, they don't sleep, they work for 12 hours in a row, whatever, 12 days in a row, and da da da. What is that like for you in reality? What's the real world like for you as opposed to media? Or
Yeah,
is
I
the
mean,
media or is the media telling the truth?
to some aspect, telling the truth.
Yeah,
But I think I started as a PGY1 doctor. So that's your postgraduate year one doctor. So your first year of being a doctor. In the time where things had changed and there was a lot of advocacy from our union to minimize the amount of work that we're doing, not minimize the amount of work, but the amount of hours and the number of days in a row that you'd work. So that was so I came at probably a nice time, a lot better than what my predecessors had experienced.
yeah,
And I started off on geriatrics, which is typically a run that's a little bit slower paced and a really nice way to ease into things,
yeah,
rather than your surgical runs, which are the ones that people hear about that are long hours. You're working longer than what you're getting paid for. You're working with really sick patients and it's incredibly stressful and having to deal with a huge number of things on what's going on in the wards. So I felt that, yeah, I started in geriatrics was a really nice way to ease into it, which is sort of a more 8 to 5 job with a few long days, which are long days where you work 7 till 10:30, 11 o'clock. So doing those once a week, and then the occasional weekend, which is a similar 8 till 11 o'clock period, Saturday and Sunday. But before you do a weekend, you get 2 days off. So it sort of evened out and wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be, I think. But then there are different. So geriatrics is probably on the sort of nicer scale of things. And then on the more extreme scale, you have things like vascular surgery and general surgery and the more high intense runs that, although you get paid a little bit more for doing a lot more hours on, are busier, you stay later and get more stressed about everything that's going on. Yeah.
yeah. And you moved to Wellington for that, right? That was your first job,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
was in Wellington. And what is that? So, I mean, you started with geriatrics, as you said, on the scales over here, and as you start ramping up into the different rotations. What is that like for you as you go from, oh, this is cruisy to actually, whoa, this is not so cruisy.
Yeah, it's hard because you only spend a short period of time on each rotation.
Yeah,
So you do 4 rotations in a year, and so as you get used to the job and you feel comfortable in what you're doing, that's basically when you switch to your new job. So I went from that to surgical, and it sort of ramped up more. So as I was feeling comfortable, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got the hang of this. It ramped up into surgical where you were doing ward rounds and sick patients, you were getting calls about people that were actually incredibly sick and having to go and review them and make plans and talk to people about what to do next. And then as you get comfortable with that, then you switch again. Yeah.
And how crazy. And I guess, if we go back to your RA training, because that's what RA training is like, or sorry, your RA role.
Yeah.
Just as you think you're comfortable I'm not equating the two, being a doctor and being RA the same thing, but more about the, how life just comes in, everything
Yeah.
is hunky-dory in the morning, and the next minute, boom, there's a bit of a change. And I guess, being a sub-warden prepares you for that sort of, hey, anything can happen at any point in time
Yeah.
in a small way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It does prepare you for that because, I mean, as a subwarden, you have weeks where things are just nice and chill, and then some big event will hit you and will stress you out for a period of time, and then you'll go back to being normal. Whereas, as on medicine, you do get periods where things are just sort of sweet as nice, and then suddenly something will happen, your patient will crash, and then it's all on then.
Yeah. I want to touch on something else, if you don't mind me, is, you're doing your medical training, but it didn't stop you from exploring other areas as well. You're like, hey, let me try, because remember you went up to Auckland to do some stuff at the consulting firm as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you still kept all your doors open. Tell me about that there, or tell the listeners about that there. What made you keep all the options open, and tell us a bit about that there.
Yeah, I mean, that was again during my BMed year. So uh, the BMed year was just an awesome year, and I would recommend it to anyone. Well, to at least think about it. Don't close the door on it. And during that year, I was sort of like, oh yeah, medicine is awesome, and I'm enjoying it. But what else could I be doing? Are there any other areas that maybe I could provide more of an impact in? And then I was just walking down a corridor and saw this sort of flyer for Boston Consulting Group. We're having this strategy academy in Auckland, and I sort of was just like, oh yeah, what's the harm? I'll just put my name down, and if I get selected, that's awesome. I'll get a flight to Auckland and have nice accommodation there and a bit of a feed and learn a bit more. And surprisingly, I was chosen, and I went up to this academy that all these commerce students from Auckland were at, and I think an MBA student from Dunedin, a chemistry honours student as well was there from Dunedin, and then just sort of learned all about consulting as a career. And they were looking for people in medicine who had been medically trained because they deal with a few medical companies and hospitals and government businesses. And apparently, doctors can offer some strategic problem solving ideas and can look at problems a little bit more alternatively to what business orientated people can. And that was awesome. I loved it. I was like, this is definitely an avenue that I could head down at some point in my career. But I just wanted to lay the foundation of my medical training, make sure I got my general registration, which is after your 2 years of being a doctor, you get, before I sort of decided where I wanted to head. Yeah.
And I love what I've noticed here is the corridor conversation with your supervisor, the
Yeah.
corridor, the corridor notice stuff. You think, great, things happen in corridors, right? Which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. It's just these chance opportunities that, life opens up these small doors, and you can either sort of take them or just leave them. And both times that I've seen, I've just chosen to go and explore them a little bit more, and they've led to awesome opportunities.
Yeah, but talk opportunities. So you did your 2 years of your rotations, and
Yeah.
then what happens then for you? So you've done your two years, and then you start choosing areas that you want to sort of specialize in. So
Yeah.
let's tell our listeners about how that's what that led you down.
Yeah. So you do your first 2 years of a doctor as a doctor, and then during those 2 years, you're supposed to gain a vast sort of experience in a different number of specialties, well, basic foundation in a number of specialties. And then eventually you sort of, as those 2 years come to an end, you try and figure out where you might want to head in the future. And I mean, your basic sort of typical options are surgical, medical, but in between, there's all these amazing different specialties in there. And then you apply to the various DHBs around the country for positions as a registrar, which is the next step up, essentially. For me, I again, was sort of like a little bit unsure as to where I wanted to head and what I wanted to get into. I enjoy surgery, but I didn't know whether I wanted to dedicate my life to it, which is something I felt that to do well in, you have to put in, be incredibly dedicated to, and quite sort of spend a lot of time on. And not that I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know whether I had the passion or drive to do that. And then I sort of spent 6 months doing ED. So in Wellington, which was an experience at this time when, you know, the health sector is quite under-resourced and incredibly pressured. And then sort of around that time again, it came up to, so I'd spent 6 months in ED as what we call a senior house officer, which is just another year out from your degree. Again, thinking about where I wanted to head. And then sort of during that period in ED, I really sort of liked the idea of intensive care and anesthesiology, both of which you deal with sick patients. You get to spend a lot of time dedicated to individual patients as well and work on their individual problems. And I applied at that point to look for some ICU and anesthetic roles, and I was very fortunate to get one in Auckland in the cardiovascular ICU up here, which was an incredible opportunity, and one that I also felt that probably led from all the various things that I'd done during my medical career. So from my being a postgrad to doing research to doing that BMed side to doing some volunteer work, I think all added up into getting this position. And I moved up for family reasons as well, because my dad at the time was incredibly sick and I wanted to spend a bit more time with him. So I moved up for him and the role.
But before that, you also were involved in COVID.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about that there, because that was a whole different ballgame for you, also, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So during my rotations as a second year, I did public health, and it just, I think I was expecting it to be quite a nice run, and I had a bit of interest in public health, and just because of the way sort of health inequities across New Zealand, I feel like there's a much better way to deal with them, and I sort of wanted to explore that a little bit more. And then so as I think I was in my third week doing a 8 till 4, 8 till 5 sort of roster, thinking life's pretty good. There was one day, I think it was a Wednesday at midday, we got this call that there was this COVID case in the community with no links to anywhere else, and the country just went into lockdown, and my job changed quite quickly at that point. And a lot of it was spent doing contact tracing in the Auckland region and following where these cases were and linking them to various people and sort of doing risk stratification and figuring out what their exposures were and how likely they were to expose other people. And towards at the start, we thought we had it, things were looking good, but then it just blew out exponentially, and I mean eventually led to our sort of living with it response, which is when I went into ED and then dealt with all the people who were coming in with COVID, some of them being young and having good immune responses and having fevers, sore throat, not really having experienced flu before, and just talking them through it and explaining that it's really normal, to actually people with comorbidities who needed oxygen and needed a little bit more intensive therapy.
And I guess, that would have been, at that point in time, you would have been exposed more to government policy as well, because the government policy would have been something you'd have to deal with as a change to go with the response.
Yeah. I mean, so all the messages came from the top down, of course, and sort of, we're stamping this out, we're following every case. And you'd ring people and you'd tell them you've been exposed, and they weren't particularly happy, of course, to hear that, because at that time it was 14 days in isolation. It was it was intensive. Yeah. So you're telling these people, no, you can't go to your jobs anymore. You're going to be off for 14 weeks. You're going to test sort of regularly 5, 7, and at 14, and at which point if you're negative on 14, you can go back out into the community based on an exposure that was, you know, they might have passed someone in the Caltex or something,
Yeah.
a very short exposure that you couldn't necessarily say, or they could have had very much more closer exposure, and you're sending these people to quarantine still at the time. And of course, no one really wanted to go to quarantine, but they were high risk because someone in their family had COVID. It was, again, it was a great experience to learn how to talk to people and how to try and talk people down and explain where you're coming from in this regard and what we're trying to do and trying to achieve.
But it would have been challenging for you though, because you see the thing, but for you having these conversations, it couldn't have been easy all the time. I mean, you have a great demeanor and a great, but at some point you're like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah. And I think sort of at the start when we all had heaps of energy and we were all ready to stamp it out, and round one went so well, so round two we're going to do the same. And I think eventually you just became quite exhausted and quite tired, and people were becoming frustrated. And it's what we saw in the community and on the news that people weren't adhering to the lockdown sort of as they were getting sick of it, which is understandable. But I think it was sort of trying to get our message across that this is a deadly virus, and from what we're seeing overseas, we don't have the ICU capacity to actually look after everyone that could become sick with it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we got to a period where we could have a vaccine and reduce that risk. But it was hard, and we worked with so the public health nurses did a lot of these phone calls, and you could see on their faces and from their demeanor that they were just getting battered and quite often abused by people on these calls. So they took the brunt of it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think, we forget that we're dealing with humans here. There might be a virus or whatever, but humans are humans and they will react. Either they'll be thankful, but also they'll be like, hey, you're taking away whatever it is, whatever their reaction is, and someone has got to fight that. So lots of appreciation to anyone that did those phone calls, including yourself. So kudos to all of you that are out there at that time. And I guess nobody knew. Nobody knew. The world was uncertain. All this was being made up. It's a brand new thing. So there's no one to blame and there's no one to cause. It's just the way the world was at that point in time. So you got to that there, and then you went up to Auckland, or you were in Auckland for this new rotation here, and with your dad. What is that like for you, that experience there? Because that, as we spoke before we jumped on here, was it's a pretty unique experience to get that exposure.
Yeah. So in terms of the ICU experience,
yes,
New Zealand's cardiovascular ICU, so it's the only cardiovascular ICU in the country. Other ICUs do cardiovascular work, but this unit has ECMO patients, so patients that essentially the heart and lung function, or heart and or lung function, is being supported by a machine, like a bypass machine. And it's the only place in the country that does it. And then you're dealing with quite complex patients that have had massive heart surgeries. And then you're also dealing with the transplant patients that have had heart transplants and lung transplants, again, the only place in the country that deals with them. So quite a sick cohort of people, and someone like myself who's very, very junior in their career. It's an enlightening experience to be able to sort of help and treat these patients.
That's amazing, an amazing opportunity. And that's finished up, for now you are in anesthesiology, right? Is that
yes.
correct?
Yeah, so I've just started that at the middle of January, and currently working in Middlemore. So I'm doing anesthetics, which is essentially allowing the surgeons to do the operations by either putting patients to sleep or numbing up various regions to allow the surgeons to do their work, which is an awesome, I find it amazing, and love it, because you get to meet these people prior to something that is quite anxiety provoking and stressful for them, and talk them through it and allow them to get through the surgery, and you monitor them. It's the only time in hospital that you ever have a doctor really singularly looking after you for a period of time. I mean, your doctors on the wards are looking after a heap of patients, even the ones in ICU, they have one-to-one nursing, but the doctors are looking after all the other sick patients as well. So it's really the only time that you get, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours with a single doctor monitoring every heartbeat and every blood pressure and every saturation and giving medications to treat those as you see fit. And then waking people up at the end and hopefully seeing them really comfortable and really happy to see that their surgery's been done successfully. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? When you think about a lot of people that get into medicine, that's because they want to help people, which is what all doctors do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's very rare for you to have the one-on-one time when you become a doctor. You have, especially working in a hospital, you are looking after a lot of people. And as you said, this is probably the one specialty where it's just you and a patient for up to 6 to 8 hours. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's pretty crazy when you think of it like that. It's quite intense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been talking for quite a bit, which is great. I mean, we can keep talking forever and ever. But if we circle back and go, cool. If you said to your mom or your parents when you were living year 13 in Fielding and be like, hey parentals, this is what I'll be doing in 10 years time. It's 10 years, 10, 11 years time.
Yeah.
What do you think the reaction would have been, at that point in time for you as well, as you reflect back?
I think I probably at that time I thought I would have been if I thought I was going to get into medicine, I would have thought that I would have been some sort of surgeon of some sort. But I think again, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
I probably would have thought that I'd be back in Palmerston North doing something, whether that be medicine or another area. But yeah, I wouldn't have believed it. And I don't think my parents would have believed it either. I think they still also are in a little bit of disbelief when they tell people that their son's a doctor currently. And they feel that sometimes people are a little bit shocked to hear that one of their children is a doctor.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And through the process of life happened for you as well. Your dad was unwell as well, and you went through that process as well. So that's we speak about your journey, but your life is happening at the same time as well.
Yeah.
And there was some trying times for you as well.
Yeah, so I mean, he passed away actually before I could come up to Auckland, which is a little bit tragic. And so again, life didn't head in the direction that I wanted it to head in or thought it would head in. But then again, I had this awesome opportunity up in Auckland to work in an incredible centre. So that was like a slight upside to quite a downside. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, life happens, and you have no idea, and it could have. I mean, you went there with the motivation to be there with your dad while he was unwell, but in the same time, you ended up helping a lot of people that have been unwell as well. So it's pretty crazy how life does that, and especially for you. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really powerful moment. And as you reflect back, what do you think your biggest challenge was through this whole journey so far? Because obviously there's a lot more coming. Your biggest challenge that you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I've got another huge number of years ahead of me, some big exams to get through as well.
But I just mean like as for Sam, not just academically, but just Sam as a person. Yeah.
I think what sort of challenges are you asking? What sort of challenges I can foresee?
What have you had? What is your big,
what's the big
for you as you because we can't foresee what's coming in the future.
Yeah, no.
But
I think probably not getting into medicine from the health sciences was sort of quite a defining time.
Yeah.
And I say that not because it was like a terrible experience, but it set me on a journey that I wasn't expecting, but led to multiple other opportunities that I may have not, like I can't say because I didn't experience it, but may not have headed in if it went the way I expected it to.
It's interesting because we had a few other people that have gone to med school, the postgrad pathway, and they have said the same thing. They have said that if life had been linear, there's nothing wrong with being linear, but they go, hey, because if this went this way, then did this here, well, not this went that way there, it just opened up so many opportunities that they would never have, or would never have come across, because they would have been so focused on different pathways. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I love how you said it was not a negative thing. It's just a different look at things, which is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there are multiple other things, as we've talked about, that
Yeah,
they've also been setbacks. Well, not
yeah,
setbacks, but just things that we weren't expecting, like the first one in the university career being that the University Hall of Colleges not getting into one that I thought was good. And I mean, I could trace it back to then, and because I met people at
certainly.
that period who have set me on this journey that has been incredible, and met people along the way that have had huge influences on my life. Yeah.
And beautiful, exactly. I like how you went right back, because it was right there. It was right there. That was your first. Hey, actually, let's go right back. It's right back to when you took your pregnancy, your book on
Yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
If we go right back, that's very, very
Yeah.
different. That's a defining moment right there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot more before that as well. Sam, we've been talking for almost an hour and 15 minutes, and we could keep talking forever and ever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in the interest of time, and also in the interest of you having to go and enjoy your weekend, we'd love, our podcast is called Bastards of Knowledge. In every episode, we love our guests to share some piece of knowledge they'd love to put into our listeners' baskets of knowledge, and myself as well. So, is there something that has resonated for you in all your experiences that you think would be a fitting piece of knowledge that you would love to share?
Yeah. I think I've probably harped on about this enough for the last hour or so, but definitely that life's going to take you on a journey that you might not expect, and life's going to open up lots of different avenues, which I would encourage everyone to just explore or to look into. Just consider it. Don't close those doors prematurely, because for me they've led to so many awesome opportunities and fantastic experiences that have built on who I am as a person and led to where I am today. So if I hadn't looked into becoming an RA, if I hadn't looked into going to that consulting academy, if I hadn't taken the opportunity to go down to Dunedin, those sort of avenues, and go to a college that I wasn't expecting to go to, I think I may not be in the position that I am today, which I'm very fortunate and very lucky to be. I'm very grateful to be here and to have the opportunities that I have. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. I love how you said, don't just say no, consider it, because a lot of us will go yes and no, but the consideration is where you just take back and go, okay,
Yeah.
cool, which way do I look at things? So that's a
Yeah.
very, very beautiful share. Beautiful,
Yeah. I
beautiful
mean,
share.
it's not, I mean, you can say no. It's fine to say no to
Yeah,
things that might not be up your avenue, but I just encourage people to consider it, because, you know, you
yeah.
never know what it might bring.
And you could consider and go no. Consider it and go no, as opposed to just saying no straight off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also said that you're extremely grateful and privileged and lucky to be in this position, but I also think that someone who knows you for a while, I think the country and the world is really lucky to have someone like yourself in the medical field. The key thing for you is despite all those setbacks, you had a goal. Your goal was to work in the medical field, and you've had a few setbacks, and you're just an awesomely nice human being as well. So, for those of you that think doctors are scary and not approachable, if you get Sam as your doctor at some point, I think you're very, very lucky. So I'm pretty lucky to have gotten to know you. And thank you for sharing your story today, because I know there's quite a bit going on in your story as well. But I think our listeners out there will find something useful to take away. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. Again, very grateful to be here and very grateful to be chatting about this with you. And I'm very lucky to have met you at Hands On. That was another thing that I wasn't quite expecting. But
Crazy, hey?
lots of
Yeah.
things have come from it, in a great friendship.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's really, it's a privilege. It's a real joy. For listeners out there, hopefully you've all enjoyed this podcast today. Feel free to have a listen again. And like Sam said, take those opportunities when they come up, consider them, and don't be afraid to, when you walk in the corridor, don't be afraid to look at the notice boards and have a chat with somebody, because you never know what might happen. So Sam, from myself and from Tana, who's not here today, for Boston Knowledge, I'd like to say thank you for joining us. For listeners out there, thank you, Sam. And for listeners out there, please feel free to listen, and hopefully you find at least one piece of knowledge that you can put into your basket. And if not, then listen to the podcast again, because I'm sure you've missed something. Till next time, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sam.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.